is 800 BC, when a tribe of skilled craftsmen, metalworkers, and seafarers settled on a large peninsula in Central Europe. This was the tribe known as the Etruscans. They provided trade business with Greece and Rome, until one day being fully assimilated into Roman society. For years, their culture expanded and evolved. Their clothing turned into overalls, they grew soft, bushy mustaches, and they didn't even need to say a word to each other unless it was absolutely necessary. Their vocabulary became a series of yahas and woohoos, and when things went really well, they'd chant Mamma Mia. These are the origins of Italy. I've got a weird heritage. I've been making videos for a while now, since I was 14 in fact. 8 years of me making dumb videos about games that I love. Some about games I love a little too much. And when looking through my catalog, I realized something. I have a shockingly low number of Mario reviews. In fact, not counting my mini review of Mario Kart Wii, I've only looked at Mario Odyssey and 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Those are his most recent games in the lineup, and one of them was a re-release of a Wii U game. I don't always like to restrict myself looking at games that are part of a bigger franchise. I do want to look at games that I'm genuinely interested in. Which is interesting because one day, I just had a bug to go and fully play the original Super Mario Bros. Games again. It's funny because I feel like Mario is sort of on the same level as, say, Mickey Mouse. Like, it's hard to introduce someone new to this series because it feels like everybody knows who Mario is. But then I realized that there aren't too many people who talk about Mario's origins, and while this is certainly a well-documented subject, most of the videos that talk about that often look and sound like, "Hello interwebs, and I'm here to talk to you about the original Super Mario Brothers." "Not so fast, Sean." "Oh my god, it's my evil twin brother, John. I am here to tell you that your opinion is wrong." "Oh. Shit." Mario got his start in the arcades as the protagonist of the 1981 Donkey Kong. It's a very basic arcade game by today's standards, but it's shockingly expressive for the time. Mario wasn't actually called Mario in this game, surprisingly, for he was named Jumpman. Well, I know why he's called that. He's Italian.
Like me. I did it.
He wouldn't officially get the name until the game came out west when the American branch of Nintendo named him Mario. Less so because he was Italian, and more so because it was a nod to Nintendo of America's landlord, Mario Segale. It probably helped that the man was Italian-American, but I like to think he could have been Irish and named Seamus, and they still would have named him that. The Super Seamus Brothers, Ireland's best. Mario would appear again in the 1983 arcade game Mario Brothers, where they introduced his twin brother, Luigi. Again, this game is pretty standard as well, but for the time, I can imagine it was a lot of fun in the arcades. I would have loved to see someone's reaction to seeing both this and Donkey Kong and discovering it's the same person in both. I can imagine that would have been pretty wild. That's impossible! 1983. Now, why does that year sound familiar? Well, that'll do it. The market for video games at home nosedived during this time, and when you look at what was being released, it's pretty easy to see why. Tons of poor quality games that were being very falsely advertised, way oversaturating the market alongside copyright laws that actually didn't exist now that I say it out loud. When you see how strict and stingy game companies are when it comes to their products today, this crash is the reason why. The medium was almost killed because of it. Arcades were still doing fine, since I'm pretty sure if you were designing a game that was meant to be played on something the size of me, I think there was probably a bit of pressure to make the damn game good. Up till then, Nintendo had been sticking to the arcade, but they had made a couple of Japanese exclusive Pong consoles which you could play at home. I don't think the crash necessarily hurt them, at least not as much as the other gaming companies like Atari and Coleco, but they were still looking for their big breakout product. Donkey Kong was the start, Mario Bros helped continue it, and finally Nintendo threw their hat in the ring with their own console, that being the Famicom. This is the Japanese version of the NES which we got in the United States, keeping in the Japanese tradition of looking and feeling much better than the American version. Seriously, I love the way this thing looks and it feels so high quality. Although I will argue it's not really as comfortable to play as the NES. The wires on the controllers are so short and they're hardwired into the system, so if your controller breaks or malfunctions, then you gotta get the whole system replaced. I mean, considering the size of the common Japanese apartment, I guess this probably does a fine enough job, but I'll take the NES with its longer and detachable controller wire. But the first game to be released day and date with both the Famicom and the NES was Super Mario Bros. I do wonder why they decided the way they differentiate this game from the original Mario Bros. Arcade game would just be to add Super to the title. I mean, I guess you could use it to show something's new and improved.
Oh my god, it's Super Sean! I got a new shirt.
Ever since its release, Super Mario Bros. Has reigned supreme as one of the most popular games of all time, as of now selling 48 million copies, 40 of those from its original launch on the NES and Famicom. People went nuts for this game, and many still do, touting it as one of the greatest games to ever be released. Who's gonna tell him? Look, you have to understand that all the praise this game has gotten since its released almost 40 years ago is absolutely warranted when you understand the context. At the time, there wasn't a game like this ever released. There was this cool fantasy world to explore, and the challenge was absolutely fair. It wasn't trying to nickel and dime you like the arcades, or scam you out of your money like many Atari games were doing. It was a perfectly promoted product that showed the consumers what it was and delivered it tenfold. And in saying that out loud, I should probably put this little guy somewhere he won't hurt himself. Yeah, there we go. I feel that aspect of delivering what was promised is a strength that could be applied across the entire series. You'd be hard-pressed to find a mainline Mario game that didn't deliver on what it promised to the player. Spin-offs are a bit of a different story, but at its core, this set the foundation for the rest of the Mario series, being high quality and consistent. And when you look at it under those guides, I think that's why this game got as much praise as it did back in 1985. Now, when you look at the game without that context and judge it on its own merits, yep, it's certainly the first Super Mario game. It is kind of weird playing this game after experiencing almost every other mainline game in the series, and there's definitely an argument to be made that there's not much of a reason to go back and play this one. I don't entirely agree with that, but I understand where the perception comes from. This game is very simple, but it's very effective. The game takes place in this mystical land called the Mushroom Kingdom, where blocks float in the air, loose coins inflate the economy, and the goddamn turtles run amok. The leader of this kingdom is one Princess Toadstool. Yeah, that's what she was called in America for a couple of years until her Japanese name, Peach, became the standard. To defend her kingdom from the tyranny of the evil Koopa Kingdom, she surrenders herself to King Koopa. Again, that was his name in America until he was officially renamed into Bowser. I have no idea why only their names were changed. I guess maybe some notes didn't get transferred, or maybe they wanted the names to be more synonymous with their roles. The King of the Koopas is called King Koopa. The Princess of the Toads is called Toadstool. Good thing Mario is as Italian a name as you can get, because I don't think you can get a more literal sounding Italian man unless you named him Leonardo Luciano. Speaking of Mario, he is tasked with saving the princess from Bowser and to restore peace to the Mushroom Kingdom. Now, Mario's origins in the Mushroom Kingdom has always been a weirdly debated one. Originally, his backstory was after his tussle with Donkey Kong, Mario and Luigi were working jobs as plumbers in Brooklyn, when suddenly they came across one of the green pipes you find in the game and get transported to the Mushroom Kingdom that way. Two things. One, the fact that Mario and Luigi ran a family-owned business in New York involving them to wear a tool belt and fix other people's belongings is probably the most Italian thing I've ever heard in my life. Sure, it's a bit stereotypical, but it's not inaccurate. Have you met us Italians? We're loud, we're greasy, and we always know a guy.
He can reach the top shelf. You're taller than me!
And second, this origin would soon be changed to be that Mario and Luigi were just born as residents of the Mushroom Kingdom. Weird how they're still Italian in a world that has no Italy, but honestly, I like this more. It makes things less complicated. That is, until a new goddamn Mario movie is showing that this is possibly going to be their origin again, which, considering the cast and what his voice actually sounds like, really makes me wish they just had him and Luigi born in that world from the get-go.
Mushroom Kingdom, here we come!
I got way off track there. Regardless, you travel across 8 different worlds in an attempt to save Peach. At the end of the castle levels in each world, we meet a Toad who was taken as a decoy to throw Mario off, telling that our princess was in another castle. Now, I know that this has often been cited as really lame and that the Toads have kind of become the proverbial punching bag of the series because of this. Personally, I like to think it goes back to Mario being Italian. The thing we're looking for most is always in the last possible drawer.
Oh, there's my gun.
As for the game itself, well, there it is. Yeah, this is a very what you see is what you get kind of game. You run right, you jump through obstacle course like levels until you get to the flagpole at the end. There are 8 worlds with 4 levels, each ending with a castle stage that ends with a boss fight. You do this for 32 levels and you win. And if you think I'm grossly understating the content in this game, you might be right, but honestly, this is probably one of the simplest games that someone could play nowadays. Every level follows a strict flat line for you to run across. You have the occasional pits and platforms you can jump across, but in my opinion, the level design is honestly not the hardest aspect of this game, since I can't really remember anything that unique from them. The most you'll find if you explore are a select few bonus rooms that have a bunch of coins. Either they're way up in the sky or deep underground, and they're nothing spectacular. It doesn't help that coins aren't super useful outside of getting a high score and collecting an extra life when you get 100. You can occasionally find extra power-ups hidden in the levels via certain blocks, and those who are used to the onslaught of power-ups you get in later Mario games, sorry to say you only get 3 here. Technically 4 if you count the green mushroom, but that gives you a 1-up. You have the red mushroom, which makes you grow big and gives you an extra hit point. You take a hit and you become Small Mario. You can find fire flowers that also allow you to take an extra hit and can give you the ability to shoot fireballs, thus making it the better option by default. This thing can kill almost every enemy in the game, including boss fights. When you get it, you better hold on to it, since unlike later games in the series, if you take a hit as Fire Mario, you shrink back down to your small form. This can be a bit of a pain to deal with, considering that the game has kind of a scaling system for your power-ups. You can't spawn a fire flower until you first grab a mushroom. If you somehow manage to grab a fire flower when you're small, you only grow into Big Mario. That aspect is thankfully fixed in later games, and the scaling is something that remains constant across the series. However, this doesn't apply to the last power-up you can find, the Invincibility Star. You grab it, and you run through Bowser's lackeys like it's nothing. It's a lot of fun to use, but because it's so overpowered, it's easily the rarest power-up you can find in the game. You're likely to find it 2, maybe 3 times at most if you're lucky. You got yourself some Goombas who only ever walk in a straight line, and then proceed to pray to themselves whenever they see the bottom of Mario's shoes. Yeah, jumping off it gets the job done on most of these guys, except for Bowser. The only time the Goombas are ever annoying is when you end up missing them by like a few pixels, or sometimes they'll just turn around when they run into the remains of their close friends. Hey man, I can relate.
Nope, not doing that.
Koopas can be a lot of fun. When you jump on them, they can turn into a shell that you can kick. Anything in its path is basically dead on contact. The green Koopas are pretty dumb. If they approach a cliff, they go. The red ones are a little smarter. They see a cliff, they retain the will to live, and turn around. The same kind of applies to the buzzy beetles you run into later in the game. They're basically just less interesting Koopas. In the castles, you have these fireballs called Potobos. Nice. You got yourself piranha plants that come out of the pipes, Lakitus who throw spikies down on you, which are one of the few things you can't jump on. You got Cheep Cheeps who are, well, fish. And you got Bloopers who are, well, squids. Yeah, there's a bit of a weird animal theme with these enemies. You got turtles, fish, squids, beetles. You do have the fireballs, but what the hell is the Goomba supposed to be? Oh. The worst of the bunch has to be the Hammer Brothers. I don't know if it's just faulty programming or what, but these are the hardest enemies in the game, dead serious. Their pattern for throwing hammers is basically random. Trying to run under them when they jump is difficult to time. Jumping on them is basically an impossibility because there's a very high likelihood that you will land on the hammer that you hold right above their head right as they're about to throw it. Not even the bosses are this annoying. Bowser isn't the easiest boss ever, especially in the later worlds where he shoots fire and throws hammers at you, but the most you have to do is just to get past him and hit the axe. Neat detail, if you kill the early world versions of Bowser with the fire flower, you reveal that it's actually an enemy in disguise. That's pretty neat. You don't really need the fire flower to beat Bowser, it just makes it easier. If you time yourself right, you can just jump right past him with no problem. It helps especially that you have enough control over Mario to do that. That is one thing I feel surprises everyone when they play this game. The controls are good. With the game being as simple as it is, there isn't too much to discuss here. I mean, just look at the NES controller. Every button you need to play the game is right here. Running and jumping feels pretty smooth, and when you get a rhythm going, you can blast through levels like it's no problem. You actually have some momentum and control to your jumps, which is insane considering when this game came out. No other platformer before this gave you movement this responsive. Hell, even some games that came out after didn't do that. Steering your jumps doesn't feel as graceful as I would like it to be, but you can correct most of your mistimed jumps with very little problem. The only thing I still don't know how to feel about is the inclusion of a run button. You hold down B and you accelerate faster until you reach top speed. I get why it was included back when this game came out. I doubt there were many games that came out whose screen scrolled this quickly, so they gave you an option to ease players in. However, I'm the type of player who firmly believes you should never take your thumb off the run button while playing this game. Playing without running is an honest-to-God slog. I don't understand why anyone would prefer playing the game this way. I also feel like it gives me more control over my jumps. If you try to jump from a standstill, it feels like you're pushing a car with your bare hands. I would say you should just back up and get more of a running start, but in a move that I still to this day do not understand, the screen locks when you move forward. If you try to go left at any point, the screen will not go with you. Now this, I really can't explain. Maybe it was a programming snafu, glue, or perhaps it just saved on system memory. I don't know, but I will say it is easily my least favorite part of replaying this game. If there's a power-up you missed because you took a pipe that sent you forward, you can't go back and get it. That's honestly the only thing that feels particularly dated when it comes to how the game plays. Although, and this may be a little controversial, I do feel the game's presentation as a whole is what has aged the harshest. Again, this game came out in 1984 and was the first to be properly developed for the system. The capabilities of the hardware were still yet to be discovered, so I do feel the graphics hold up in that sense. It is very simple. You're not going to find anything remotely complex in this game on a technical level. The sprites are very simple and blocky. The animations often consist of 2 frames. Has anyone ever noticed how goofy Mario's swim cycle is? It looks like he's playing Hotfoot. The early designs of the character, man, they had it a little rough. Mario wearing a brown shirt and red overalls just looks wrong to me. Peach in a white dress is kind of surreal in hindsight, given that this basically becomes her Fire Flower outfit. Bowser, I mean, sweet Jesus, I think he got it the worst. His horns look like he's wearing a birthday party hat, and why is he so short? Big Mario is taller than him. Actually, Bowser is hunched over and a bit sickly green. Oh my god, we're beating up a senior citizen. He's wearing the hat. It's probably his 90th birthday. And also his last one. The music in this game, I mean, do I even need to mention it? It has become just as iconic as Mario himself. The main overworld theme is a good time, though you are going to be hearing it a lot as it is the most played track in the game by far. The underground theme is one that I don't have many thoughts on in regard to this rendition, but the remixes it gets in later games, and especially Smash Bros., is where I think the theme really shines. I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I think my favorite track may be the underwater theme. It has a nice energy to it that feels relaxed, but also upbeat and fun. It helps that we don't hear it too often in the game, so it stays fresh whenever it comes up. The castle level theme, is it fair to say it's not even a track? I don't know what the melody is supposed to be here, it's so erratic. I like to think that the game's composer, Koji Kondo, when asked about this track said, "Oh no, don't worry, it sounds like this." I feel his future works are stronger personally, but for his first outing, this was damn good. Kondo had came into development right out of college to compose the game's soundtrack. The design of the game primarily came from Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. Shigeru Miyamoto, I mean, this man created most people's childhoods. He was an artist for Nintendo before being promoted to director with Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., and he's labeled as the main director for this game as well. To go into this man's history would be an entire video in and of itself, but if you want a quick and easy watch about him, I highly recommend Treecicle's video, The Historic Rise of Shigeru Miyamoto. It's a fascinating history lesson on one of the godfathers of game design. Takashi Tezuka is one that I think more people would recognize from his contributions to the Zelda series, as he was basically the man calling all the shots from most of the early games. Writing, directing, designing, producing. Again, this is a topic for another video, but his contributions to this game are basically on par with Miyamoto's. Their influence that we've become more familiar with in their future works is all over this game. When you break it down, it's a very imaginative world they were able to create, and this wasn't seen in any other games before this. I feel that really needs to be understood, as most games on home consoles were either just some form of Pong or Space Invaders. This was one of the first commercially successful games to create what seemed like a large world that you could explore and discover in. I can only imagine playing this game when it came out in 1985 and discovering all the cool secrets, some of the secret areas where you can get coins, or the fact that in World 1-2 you can go on the ceiling and interact with the scoreboard, and the fact that you can go past the exit to find a warp point. A select few levels have these that send you forward without having to play through the whole game again. This is both cool and also a bit of a necessity, since Super Mario Bros. Doesn't have a save system. So if you get a game over or turn off the system, you're back to the beginning of the game. There is a code you can use to get back to the world you left off on, but it's not super reliable since it's very easy to accidentally start the game over again. In all fairness, nowadays, this shouldn't really be an issue, since when you know what you're doing, you could beat Super Mario Bros. In an hour. There is also a second playthrough you could do after rescuing Peach at the end, but from what I could tell, it's the same game. The only difference is that the Goombas are replaced with Buzzy Beetles, so there's not much replay value if you want some more challenge. However, if you want a little extra difficulty, you could always play the lost levels. Okay, a little context. So Super Mario Bros. Was a big hit, obviously. If it wasn't, why are we still here? It did so well that Nintendo ordered a sequel be made immediately and have it be released on the Japanese-only Famicom disk system. It was an add-on for the Famicom that played games off a floppy disk. Well, I wonder if that caught on. The same team who made the original Super Mario Bros. Returned to make this one, with the only exception, I'm guessing, being Koji Kondo, as all the music is the same from the first game. In fact, you may notice that this Mario 2 looks shockingly similar to the first game. Yeah, it's basically an extension of the first Mario game with new gimmicks, harder levels, and some tweaked graphics. I say tweaked graphics because, to tell you the truth, it's a lot of small things that you probably won't notice until you look at them side by side. The ground is made up of new sprites, and the blocks have more defined shading. The clouds have a smiley face, that's kinda cute. The hills and trees have eyes, that's not very cute. Oh look, the mushroom's different.
I can't look this game in the eye.
It's okay.
I can't. Oh my god.
You'll be fine.
Ah, it hurt me so much.
Oh my god, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, allow me to break the proverbial ice. People fucking hate this game. If you were to break it down, The Lost Levels is basically a glorified ROM hack of the first game where everything is made as difficult and annoying as possible. The story is... The script repeats itself. Yeah, the plot is exactly the same as last time. It's just an excuse to go on another adventure. And mechanically, that adventure is, once again, the exact same as last time. You have 8 new worlds with 4 levels apiece. Beat one, move on to the next until you win. The enemies have remained mostly the same with only a couple tweaks. There are now red piranha plants that move out much faster, and the Hammer Brothers follow you until the end of the screen. I'm not using it, I just like the sound. It's like they knew these guys were the worst and were just trolling us. But okay, I think I know what a lot of people are wondering. Who killed Kennedy? If this game is so similar to the first in almost every way, what makes it so much worse? It jaywalks! The level design is garbage. Every stage is designed with the utmost intention of killing you and getting you a game over. Several bottomless pits, enemies that just blindside you from off screen, a reskin of the mushroom now called the poison mushroom that... hurts my soul. The enemy placement is relentless in this game. You know how I said the challenge of the first game was where the enemies were placed and not so much the level design itself? Yeah, now it's both. There are several long jumps you need to make the heaven enemy at the beginning and end of the pit. So many of these cramped areas you can't easily get out of, then are swarming with baddies, and they starve you for power-ups so much in this game. I spend most of my time as Small Mario since I was getting hit constantly. Getting a Fire Flower is a luxury in this game compared to previously. And make sure to have fun with the whole 2-star menu you'll be able to find at most. Certain levels now introduce wind blowing across the screen, and it's often to give you a push to get to new platforms. Whenever you see those goddamn leaves on the screen, then panic. This means that you are in a level that requires you to jump across a pit and hope for the best. And in some levels, you're not even on the screen since you jump on the new super trampoline that basically... This makes the fact that you can't scroll the screen back even worse, because you need a running start in order to make these jumps. Then you have this part where... I guess you just stay here and pray? What the hell happened here? The castle levels, oh my god, the castle levels. What was even the thought process with these? Most of these levels go on forever. Not only having the same trappings as other levels, now you have a tight ceiling to deal with and massive amounts of fire to avoid. In the last game, there was a gimmick in World 7-4 where you had to navigate through the castle in a certain order to proceed. If you didn't, then the stage would loop forever until you figured it out. And I'll be honest, it was kind of a neat challenge to introduce at that point in the game, as you had to do something different and think outside the box in order to proceed. With some patience, the paths were pretty clear. So I'm guessing that everyone who made this game thought that was too easy because the labyrinth castles and lost levels are some of the worst. The path you have to follow on some of these stages is so specific and confusing that it honestly feels like the game glitches out when you keep doing the same thing with nothing happening. I would say take your time trying to figure it out, but you can't even do that since you have a time limit. This was present in the first game as well, and it didn't really add any challenge there. The times were always more than generous to you. Should I ask what happens next? What do you think happens? The time limit is always near 0 when going through the castle stages, and considering the final one is basically one giant maze with long hallways that eat up so much time, you are definitely going to die because of the timer. Do yourself a favor and do the infinite lives trick in the first level. This was something you could also do in the last game as well, but it was limited to certain levels and could be a bit tricky to pull off. I'm convinced the devs put this block configuration here just so you could do the infinite lives trick. It really doesn't serve any other purpose in the level. They put a red Koopa here so it couldn't escape the woes of education. But be careful if you get too many lives doing this. You can actually reset the counter to the negatives, causing an immediate game over if you die. It's stuff like that and all the other bullshit in this game that transcends frustration into honest-to-God hilarity. I was shockingly not that perturbed while playing this game. When a random bit of annoying design or aggravating enemy placement got the better of me, I just laughed. When I was trying to land in a section only to fall through as if I couldn't fit even though I could, I was slapping my knee in a fit of laughter. Maybe a bit too much. Even when you find a warp zone, it doesn't send you forward at all. It actually sends you back a few worlds. I'm convinced that this game was made more as a joke just to troll new players, and I think it's funny. It is objectively terrible design, but I like to imagine other people getting rageful at these moments, and it just makes me laugh. Although, full transparency here. Yeah, I kinda suck. I've been playing these through the NSO apps on the Switch, which allow me to do shit like this. Yeah, I know, this is technically cheating, and if I was playing a more authentic version of the game, I'd probably be singing a different tune. But I don't feel that bad if I'm being real. I'm not in the mood to play this game as designed if it means I'm gonna be in a bad headspace afterwards. I'd rather spend my time elsewhere. So you bet I abused the hell out of the rewind and save state just to get the footage that I needed. If I replaced that with all my deaths, there's only so many times I could say, damn, I died again. I wanted to see what was in store for me and what the game had to offer. And in all seriousness, I actually kinda dig the final world you discover after beating the final boss. It's 4 new levels you have to beat in one life in order to see everything, and it's a mess. What's with the pink pipes? Why are you swimming in the clouds? Why is there a flagpole after Bowser? I really think this was just a test level that they reworked into the final game somehow. That or they were doing some kind of asset putting this together. But I do like that the final level has you swimming through a series of blocks that spells out thank you in Japanese. And you know what? That's pretty cool. It honestly feels like a genuine thank you message at the end of what's an otherwise completely frustrating experience. In fact, it was so frustrating that it never left Japan in the first place. There have been conflicting reports as to why it never left. Some say it was because it was too difficult, and I don't really buy that. Zelda 1 came out the same year in Japan, and I'd argue that's pretty close in terms of difficulty. I honestly feel there was a concern that it was way too similar to the first Mario game to be marketable. I mean, what would the commercials say about this? Look, it's the same game, but worse. Whoa, no way. It wouldn't be until 2007 when this version would be released for international audiences on the Wii's Virtual Console. You could probably emulate it beforehand, but officially there wasn't much to pull from. There is one exception though, and that's in the form of this baby right here. Super Mario All-Stars, released on the Super Nintendo in 1993. This is a collection of the 4 8-bit Mario games that came out before, Mario 1, Lost Levels 2, and 3, all completely remade with new graphics and sounds. I'll talk about Mario 2 and 3's version next time, but for now we're gonna look at the first game in Lost Levels. As you can see, the makeover is absurdly good. Like, holy crap, both of these games clean up exceptionally well here. Not sure about this stance, but I think the All-Star version of Mario 1 might be my favorite looking 2D Mario game. I know that sounds strange because later games have way more defined art styles, but something about how Mario 1 looks just clicks with me. Since there wasn't much to work off of in Mario 1 to begin with, they made entirely new assets for everything. The ground now actually looks like the ground instead of the same brick sprite copied over and over again. The backgrounds that used to be solid colors now have a ton of depth and detail defined. This portrait of Bowser in the castle levels is hilarious. Seriously, there's one in each castle. World 5 used to look so sterile and cold, but now it's a full winter wonderland with snow on the ground, trees, and even fences. The Starry Night in World 6 has to be my favorite. It's so simple yet beautiful at the same time. The same applies to the characters as they've gotten a massive makeover. Mario now actually looks like Mario. Funny how that works. Luigi now has different proportions to Mario. He's a bit taller and skinnier. Bowser, I mean, look at him. He's just straight up handsome. And Peach gets her famous pink dress and blonde hair. All the new animations really help in smoothing out the characters' movements. Mario's swimming no longer looks so stilted. Bowser reacts to you when you hit him with fireballs, but my favorite has to be whenever you rescue a Toad in the first 7 castles. For one, they're stuffed in bags. That's just funny. Second, each castle you visit shows more Toads that were kidnapped. What goes from just one Toad at the beginning turns into an army of 7 tiny ones marching out of there. The added cutscene graphics of Peach thanking Mario are pretty nice, although I don't know why Mario's smile goes that low. It looks like he gained a double chin just by getting kissed. As for Luigi, I don't know, I think he's enjoying this a little too much. A lot of the same improvements apply to the Lost Levels, so there's not really much to go over visually. Although instead of World 9, you get 4 new worlds, A through D. It's just more levels to play through. They are challenging, but at that point in the game, most challenge just kind of feels numb to you. It is cool that we have more content available, but I honestly would take World 9 over this. That felt like a fever dream you had to earn. And even though it doesn't add much, I do miss the thank you message you get at the end. But if I'm being real here, you are better off playing the All-Stars versions of these games over the NES ones tenfold. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me, but I swear the control just feels better in this version. It's a little tighter. There's now a dedicated save system across all the games on the collection. I mean, that's worth the price of admission alone. While I do think there is value in sampling the original Super Mario Bros. Just to understand imagine what it was like, I'd say you're probably better off beating the game on All-Stars. That's how I did it growing up. The nice thing is both versions are available on the Switch's online service, so you do have a lot of options to choose through. And with the added perk of save states and rewinding, you should be able to play these games as comfortably as you'd like. Now, I know this video has gone on long enough, but I did want to bring attention to one more version of the game, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color. This is a weird one for sure, but it's also pretty interesting. This was a later release for the Color in 1999. Hey, the same year I was born.
We can drink.
At first glance, this does just seem to be a portable version of Super Mario Bros., but when you boot it up, there's a shocking amount of new stuff here. Let's go in order. When you select the game, you now have multiple save slots to choose from. That's honestly really convenient. There's now a world map that connects all the levels together. That's kind of cute. It doesn't serve as great a purpose as later games do with their overworlds, but this is a nice attention to detail. You can now save your progress on any level you want, which for a handheld game is perfect. Mario isn't very long, but you're not going to finish the whole game in a car or bus ride. This gives you a chance to put it down and then pick it back up for later. There's now a leaderboard for how fast you're able to beat the game, which is kind of cool. The extra game modes, in my opinion, are the most interesting aspect. There's a challenge mode that gives you some additional challenges, I really wrote that down, like collecting 5 hidden red coins in a level. There's also finding a hidden Yoshi egg that you can get a clue on how to find thanks to this roulette board. You vs. Boo is probably the most famous addition. It's a race against a Boo ghost that has you go through remixed levels to get to the end. Each level has a different challenge related to these changing blocks. There are some that turn invisible when you hit a block, others that change on a timer, and some that turn into spikes. The variety is really nice and is personally my favorite aspect about this version. There are little extras like drawings you can unlock as you play, and oh my god, this game has a calendar.
Oh, thank God, I know it's still 1999.
The only thing about this version I can say is objectively worse is the screen size. Since the original resolution of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color is significantly smaller, the game had to be zoomed in so that every sprite wasn't a tiny speck on the screen. The problem there is you can now see significantly less of the screen, so enemies and pits are way more difficult to see coming. I thought this version actually gave you the ability to backtrack since the screen did scroll back if you move to the left, but that's only because the screen is so zoomed in on Mario. You still can't backtrack, which I just really don't understand. This also goes for the All-Stars version, you can't backtrack in that either. I'm guessing it was just something that stayed a part of the core design, because there was no way this was a programming issue in 93 and 99. There's not much of a reason to go back and play this version, but it is a cool piece of Nintendo history. Really, if it weren't for the screen size, I'd say this is a superior version to the NES one, but being able to see less of the game does knock it down a few pegs. Still, I'd say it's worth adding to your collection if you enjoy stuff like this. This is the first Game Boy Color game I ever owned, and it's also in the box with the manual. There's just so many cool details and history. This is a purchase I'm personally happy with. With all that said and done, that's Super Mario Bros. Look, I understand it's a bit difficult to see this game's value nowadays. It has aged, and there are a lot of aspects in this game that are just done better in later entries. But that doesn't take away from what it's done for the medium of video games. Think about it, without this, gaming would never have become as popular an art form as it is now. And for this game to come from just 4 very talented artists and change the landscape of not just video games, but entertainment in general, that's no small feat. I feel if you are in any way interested in retro gaming, you owe it to this game to experience it. Now, which version should you play? I'd say that's up to you. I do think the NES version offers the most authentic experience, but the remakes and All-Stars are objectively better in almost every way. Taking out the better graphics and sound, the save feature alone is enough to play this over the original. Regardless of which version you play, you're in for a good time playing an undeniable classic. Now, Lost Levels, as hilarious as I find its existence, I can't recommend in good conscience. Its origins are interesting, but at the end of the day, you're just playing the same game again, only significantly harder. If you are even the slightest bit curious on playing it, then do so on the NSO or All-Stars versions. Without the save feature, this game is nearly impossible to finish. I find it funny that I spent about as much time talking about this game as it would probably take for people to finish it, but you know, I feel like it deserves to be talked about. Super Mario Bros. Is a really important game, and it deserves the classic status that it has. Man, I gotta say, it's really refreshing talking about Mario at this length. You know, I didn't think anything could beat my Sonic revisits, but I think this might, because this isn't the only Mario game I'm looking at. I'm gonna be looking at the rest of the classic lineup, because, you know, I haven't talked about them at all, and I think it's worth looking at. Why do I feel like I'm forgetting something? Oh! I found him. Okay. New day, new game, new location. What? The hell? When did this happen? Oh my god. That's right, the set changed again. I don't know how I keep missing it. Where the hell am I this time? Georgia? Who the hell lives there? This doesn't make any sense. I already had one fever dream with Frontiers. He won't stop staring at me. So this can't be another dream. I don't dream. I have no aspirations. Huh? What's that? Aw, well, isn't that sweet? The whole state gave me a present. Well, let's just hope it's not some weird dream-based object again. God damn it! Super Mario Brothers. It came out. Thanks for coming to my speech. I mean, it's obvious. This is one of the most influential games in existence. It redefined what it means to play a video game and virtually saved the entire game industry. And now it's the single biggest franchise that games have ever seen. It's even bigger than me.
That is one tall Italian.
This left the floodgates wide open for other series and franchises to make their mark in the world of video games. And not too long after, we started seeing other Nintendo properties come into fruition. Zelda, Metroid, Excitebike, and several other games made by other publishers. But this got people wondering, what about a follow-up to the first Mario game? Where was that? It wasn't like Nintendo was against making sequels. I mean, by 1988, they already had 2 Zelda games on the market, so what was the holdup? Well, I already mentioned how Mario 2 was already made, it just never left Japan. And if you're wondering why, well, trauma does terrible things to you. Also, there was the fact that no matter what was made, it was gonna have massive shoes to fill. But in 1988, we did see some promise as Nintendo Power showed on its front cover an advertisement for Super Mario Bros. 2, and it is ugly. I mean, I can vibe with the claymation style, but there's so much about this that just looks wrong to me. Why is Mario's hat blue? What's with the carrot? And why does the stem come out the side? And Bowser, I mean, he seems happy about something, and he's covering it with his leg.
I know what you're thinking.
Ice first, heat later. But damn, a sequel to Super Mario Bros. That was insane. I can only imagine the excitement surrounding this game. It looked more expansive, the graphics looked better, there's 4 playable characters. This definitely turned some heads. And as such, on that fateful day in 1988, we finally saw it, with the response being, congratulations to the both of you. It's not your first kid. I don't think people knew what to make of it. No one disliked it. If anything, the reception seemed pretty positive. But it was definitely different. People just thought it was kind of weird, and this was following up a game with Goombas in it. One day I'll learn your story. I myself was never super familiar with this game. I never owned the original cartridge or any subsequent digital re-release. I would eventually play the version on All-Stars as well as the Game Boy Advance remake, but I'll get into that in a little bit. The only physical version of the original game that I own is actually the Famicom version for Japanese markets titled Super Mario Bros. USA. Although things do get a little more interesting since Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't Super Mario Bros. 2. Ever have that happen? Think you're one thing when suddenly, nope. I'm alive? This version of Mario 2 was actually a palette-swapped repackage of a Famicom disc game called Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic. And when looking at things side by side, it's not even funny how similar they are. It's hilarious. Oh! To be fair, there are a lot of improvements that make Mario 2 the much better version of the game to own. Most of the static backgrounds now actually have animations to accompany them. Some enemies have different animations, while others just look completely different. Particularly Phanto, who instead of having an evil smile, originally he had this face. A few years ago, someone wore him as a mask, and he hasn't been the same since. But easily the most defining difference, in my opinion, is that Mario 2 added a run button. This is the only speed you can move at in Doki Doki Panic, and it's a slog. It's just like playing the first game without running all over again. And it's for that reason I will always say that Mario 2 is the superior version, as aside from that, nothing else of real substance was changed. It's because of this that I'm only going to talk about Mario 2 exclusively, and I don't own the original Doki Doki Panic, nor do I own the disc system to play it on. And do you think I feel good about emulating it off my gaming PC and playing it on my TV in 2023? No, I'd look like a loser. More than usual. Now on to the plot. One day Mario was asleep. Okay, that checks out. He began having strange dreams of a staircase leading to a mysterious door. Curious about this, he discovers that Luigi, the princess, and Toad were also having the exact same dream. Quick tangent, this Toad is just named Toad. Nothing else unique. He was named the same as his race.
Hi there, I'm Caucasian. Dude, same. No way.
One day, while having a picnic, they discover a cave with the same staircase and door and decide to go through it, leading them to a new place called Subcon, a world of dreams. They realize that the place has been taken over by a tyrant frog named Wart, who looks like 90% of stand-up comedians. And because the gang really likes overthrowing regimes, they set out to defeat Wart and return peace to Subcon. Although you won't know any of that while playing, as the only clue we get is during the credits where we see Mario dreaming this entire thing. How the hell did he dream that? I can't even conjure up images while I sleep, let alone something like this. You know, the more I think about it, this was probably premeditated. I mean, before bed, Mario probably just went,
Whoa! Man! Oh, that's some good baking powder.
As for the game itself, it's remarkably similar to the first game, while also not at all being the same.
Did I just write that?
It's similar in the sense that you control Mario and the gang in a very similar fashion. You run and you jump. Those are the two qualities of life. You go across stages and you try to beat them. This isn't a radical change to the series. Everything is pretty familiar while you play. But then the little changes start to make themselves known. Let's start with the obvious. You can jump on enemies, but it won't kill them. You just stand on their heads while they move.
Oh no. Non mi piace.
So like, this is Mario's hell, right? What good is he if he can't stomp on anyone? Well, that's when you discover the wonders of hitting the B button. You do that and Mario Gang will lift anyone and anything right above their head and can then throw it, killing enemies in their path. Picking up stuff is now the name of the game, as you can do that with basically everything. Enemies, plants, clocks, what? A giant key that's the size of you?
Excuse me?
This mechanic, it's fine, but it's not as fun as jumping on enemies. It's not difficult or anything, but it feels like it's just an unneeded extra step to something that was so simple previously. Now, picking up items in a level, I can actually get behind that idea. It makes way for new and interesting ways you can attack enemies and even progress in the level. You got yourself a bunch of vegetables to toss, you can occasionally find a Koopa shell and ride it. That's pretty cool, even better as it goes down the mountain. The enemy selection itself is not particularly strong, at least compared to the first game. It's all new faces, which is pretty cool, but none of them really stand out except for the new Shy Guys. These are cool looking guys, I don't mind them. Tweeters, they're just birds. Phanto is pretty creepy since he chases you across the level whenever you grab a key, but then he just goes away whenever you drop it. I wish it was like that in real life.
Freeze! What did I do? You stole that wallet! Okay, have a nice day.
This game does introduce bob-ombs to the series, which is pretty cool, although they're more used as an item rather than a hazard. You use them to blow up a wall, and that's about it. And if you look at their faces, they are A-okay.
It's my birthday!
I also love the face Spark makes whenever they get hit. They look so distressed.
Well, that's the end of this suit.
Another change is that instead of the progressive hit point system from last time, you now have a visible health bar, which you can thankfully increase as the stage goes on, but it does reset when you begin a new level. I do like that they at least kept the shrinking element from the first game, despite it just being cosmetic. The big heads do look kind of funny, although I will say, it is nice to be represented.
Inclusion is really important.
The only way you can get more hearts is by throwing a potion in the level that sends you to a reverse world finding a mushroom. I'm guessing they also added this to the game as well, and aside from the mushroom, they also played the main Mario theme here, which is pretty cool. The game's soundtrack in general is pretty good, but I don't know if I'd put it on the same level as the first game. Its main theme is pretty fun, but it does get noticeably more repetitive the more you play. Since you do go from the overworld to caves and back constantly, you're gonna hear the first few notes a lot. I don't care how good a song is, that shit gets annoying regardless.
God damn it!
The underground theme is okay, but it does get a little samey after a while. The boss music is alright. It's erratic, and it does add some tension. I guess for me, the soundtrack in general is just a bit too generic for my liking. The music could be played in almost any cartoony platformer from this time, and it wouldn't seem that out of place. It doesn't really complement Mario as much as the last game, or future games would for that matter. The soundtrack may not do much for me, but I will say the game's graphics are a treat to look at. It's very vibrant and detailed, which is a nice change of pace from the more simple and blocky look of the last game. The environments are very well defined, and most locations are very easily distinguishable. This sort of inadvertently started the trope of different themes in each world, like how we got a desert, the sky, ice world, and the underground. Not every world follows this trope, and it is a lot of the same looking assets a lot of the time, but the effort is appreciated. I guess I wish there was just a bit more going on in the background. A flat color on a large TV does kind of hurt the eyes after a while. Honestly, I'd be fine with anything back there, especially me. Oh, the sprites for all the characters look great, and the outline around them helps them pop out real nicely.
Oh right, there are other playable characters. Okay, why do I suck at this?
Probably the biggest addition is the inclusion of multiple playable characters that each have their own unique qualities. This has always been a really cool aspect of this game that shockingly took over 20 years to bring back with Super Mario 3D World. And if you played that game, it's basically the same here. Mario is the basic bitch of the group, no real strengths or weaknesses. Luigi has a high jump and is scared for his life. I mean, look at his feet go! He's also really slippery on the ground, so yeah, he's probably my least favorite of the bunch. Toad is the fastest of the bunch, but his jump is easily the shortest. Although he does have the best strength as he can pick up stuff really fast. The princess is easily the most useful character as she can float in the air for a really long time, making most platforming a non-issue. The only downside to playing as her is the fact that she takes the longest to pick stuff up.
Ooh, so close.
I ended up using everyone pretty equally across the whole game, which I think was intended as some levels seem to work best with a particular character. Like, God help you if you pick Princess on a level that makes you dig. Although saying that, you don't need a certain character to get through the game. Every stage is more than playable. While some characters have specific abilities, the one thing they all have in common is the super jump. You hold down for a few seconds and hit the jump button and you jump super high into the air. It's pretty useful, though I get why it was never really brought back. You don't end up using it too often during any given playthrough. Now, if there is one thing that's certainly different from the last game, it's the inclusion of a boss fight at the end of each stage. Yeah, you get a little mini boss during normal levels, and then it gets topped off with a main boss at the end of each world. Birdo is the one you're gonna face the most. She is very easy to deal with, though grabbing the eggs to throw back at her is a bit annoying. It is strange how Birdo is one of the only characters from this game to be a mainstay in the series. I bring this up because, well, what is she? Is she a dinosaur, a lizard? This was before Yoshi became a thing, so I have no idea what this design is supposed to be. And maybe if I look in the manual, I'll find something. He thinks he is a girl.
Oh no.
He prefers to be called Birdetta. Did they just dead name a Mario character? The other bosses aren't really anything to write home about. Mauser just has you throw bombs back at him. Triclite is similar, just to use whatever blocks you can find around. Fry Guy is pretty annoying since he splits apart and you have to take out each small fire individually. Weirdly enough, Claw Grip is actually exclusive to this version. He was not in the original Doki Doki Panic. And here you just throw things at him. Yeah, there's not much variety in terms of how you fight. This kind of applies to the final boss, Wart, with the only difference being you have to throw stuff in his mouth when it's open. We are killing this man via asphyxiation. What is this game? Also, I'd like to point out that Wart's wearing a white robe. That's just funny to me. He looks like a washed up priest whose robe is open in front of what looks like a small child of Jesus Christ.
What? I'm Irish Catholic, I can make the joke. I'm not proud that I can, but I can still make it.
After we beat him, he gets carried off by the citizens of Subcom. Now this is how I wish to be carried off when I die. We see Mario sleeping. That's it. Yeah, kind of a ho-hum ending if I'm being honest. I guess being shown that it's a dream the whole time just kind of takes some of the excitement out of it. That would be like if I just randomly woke up now.
Way ahead of you.
So that was Mario 2. It's a thing. I think if there was any Mario game that I could say you'd be fine skipping, it would probably be this one. Not that it's bad, far from it. It's very bright and colorful, it has good challenge, the character abilities are a great addition, but I feel overall, it's just kind of boring to play. It doesn't really change things up in any meaningful way. The levels are fine, but I can't remember the layout or set pieces from any of them. Again, I had a similar problem with Mario 1, but that was the first game in the series, so I can excuse some of that stuff here, but for a sequel, I would have liked it to amp up a little bit more. It also doesn't help that the game just feels longer too. Mario 1, when you know what you're doing, you can beat that game in an hour. This game, not so much. It took me around 3, which isn't much more, I'm aware, but the added length just doesn't feel warranted. Granted, I would heavily recommend you play this over the original Mario 2 Lost Levels, but overall, it's not really my favorite, and I don't really go back to it on a regular basis. Same goes for the All-Stars version, which I'll talk about real quick here since all the same improvements from the first Mario game are here as well. You got a save system with improved graphics and sound. Compared to the facelift Mario 1 got, this doesn't quite pop as much in my opinion. I mean, I love the added backgrounds, and I appreciate that Peach got her blonde hair back, and some of the new sprites are welcomed. Enemies have more dimension, Wart has a gold robe, and in the final screen, he's bleeding from his eyes. I mean, holy shit, that's strangely graphic for this game. And how did that even happen? Last I checked, he choked to death, and now he's bleeding from his eyes? Did he get total recalled? Now imagine him as a frog. There is a part of me that strangely prefers this simpler look from the original, though that's just me personally. Still, this is by and large the superior version of the game to play. However, if there is one remake that I feel takes the cake across the board, then that would be the 2001 remake for the Game Boy Advance titled Super Mario Advanced. God, I haven't talked about the Game Boy Advance enough. I love this little guy. Granted, most of my library was garbage license games, but shit man, there was a lot of really good stuff on here. Super Mario Advance kind of follows the same footsteps set by Super Mario Deluxe in the Game Boy Color, but now with just way more horsepower behind it. Let's start there. The graphics are mostly based off the All-Stars version, but now with just cleaner animations and big boy. Look at them, they're huge, large, shy guys. Why does that weirdly fit my description? Sprite scaling is all over the place. Enemies have it, these weird carrot things have it, the hearts you collect have a ton of new animation, which is really cool. There is some screen crunch in this game, but for some reason, it doesn't feel as intrusive as Mario Deluxe. I think it helps that the screen's resolution is just naturally wider. The image in total does look really washed out, but that's mainly because of how the GBA looked in its early years. In fact, I had to color grade a lot of this footage just to make it look somewhat nice. But overall, it does still look really good. The sound, that definitely took a hit. The GBA sound card, especially for remixes, has always been a little rough, and that's fairly prominent here. It almost sounds like the music is blowing out the speaker. And for the love of God, please tell me who decided this game needed voice acting? There aren't any cutscenes or even a script for that matter. It was just decided that for every move, every hit, everything in some form or fashion has the character make a noise. Whether it's a grunt or a threat from a boss, this game is chatty and it never shuts up.
Choose a player. Here I go. I am the Great Wart. I'm gonna finish you off.
To be fair, some of the boss lines are kind of funny though.
This is as far as you know.
This is the fourth world.
Step right up if you're ready to get toasted.
Do you need help? How? You're dead. There is a fair amount of extra stuff added in this version, like a whole new level select, a revamped save feature that allows you to save on any specific level you want. It even comes with a remake of the Mario Bros. Arcade game. That's pretty cool. I hope it keeps showing up. The biggest difference is during the halfway point where I guess the devs just wanted to do something radical and gave a whole new boss with Roberto. This is a weird addition, though it kind of makes it unique. This is the only new boss in the game, which in a way kind of makes it stand out more. With all these changes and improvements, I'd argue this is the best version of Mario 2 by a long shot. Yeah, the voices are a bit annoying and the colors don't pop as much as the All-Stars version, but overall, its revamped look and energy just kind of makes this version more fun to play. I'd gladly take this over the NES version any day. For a while, this version was pretty difficult to get your hands on, but after it was released on the Wii U's Virtual Console, it became way more widely available. This is the first version of the game I ever fully played, so maybe there is some bias, but I still think most people would agree it's probably the best version to play. It's also available on the Switch Online service, so I guess that's an extra reason to get the expansion pack. I said I guess. So now you have all versions under one roof, and that's pretty cool. You'll have a decent time with any version if I'm being honest, but you'll likely enjoy the GBA version the most. I say experiment and see what fits you best. Or not, I'm not your dad.
Not that I know of. I'm not though. I'm really not.
There is certainly a lot to admire about Mario 2. That's really about all I can say. I admire it as its own little footnote in the series, but in terms of real evolution, we would have to wait until next time. I could talk about it now, but I really don't feel like making another hour-long video.
It's been a long...
Nah, I gotta say, what a great way to start this new chapter of my life. I mean, I wake up in a new state, that state gives me a present. Could this day get any better? No? Well, that's just kind of sad if you think about it. No, seriously, that's like really sad. It's only been 20 minutes and the day's already peaked. Good day, everybody. Don't mind me. I'm just getting all my ducks in a row. Well, now what am I going to do with my time? Maybe I should do a little recounting. Let's see. I have Mario 1. Then we have Mario The Lost Levels. I don't own it physically, so I'm going to do what I do best. Pretend. Then I have Mario 2. And now for the fourth game in the series, Mario 3. What? That doesn't make any sense. How can Mario 3 be the fourth game? That breaks math. Everybody knows how numbers work. Watch. All right, we got 1, 2, and then 3. Oh, what the fuck? Super Mario Bros. 3. I don't really have a unique introduction for this game. I just want to clarify, that's not a knock against this game, far from it. It's just, much like the first game, Mario 3 is one of the most influential games in existence. So much so to the point where I'm actually a little nervous to talk about it because there are so many reviews of Mario 3 out there, whether it's, actual, video essays, talk about the history and stuff, or just comedic laugh fests. And that made me wonder, what the hell could I add to the discussion? Really nothing, if I'm being honest. Mario 3's influence goes way beyond when it first came out. Every opportunity given, Nintendo will find some way to pull inspiration from this game. Whether it's fun nods like Galaxy using Mario 3's athletic theme, to not so subtle moves by taking power-ups from this game and using them in other ones. The practice of those games are more of a topic for another day, but it does add to my concern in talking about Mario 3 because this is a very saturated entity in the world of video games. But then I figured, it's not worth getting that held up over because there's still a lot to talk about in Mario 3, both as a game in and of itself, and also its history, which was weirdly complicated in the West. To give some context, Mario 3 was released in Japan in 1988, and it wouldn't be released in North America until 1990, and Europe wouldn't get it until August of 91. Geez, what did the British do to piss you off? Well, what did America do to piss you off? I should really stop asking questions. There's no clear answer as to why it took so long to come over to the West. I mean, I doubt it took that long to localize it since there's not a lot of text in this game that would have needed to be changed. My best guess is since Mario 2 had just released in the US in '88, they probably wanted to give it more time to sell over here. Releasing 2 games in the same series a few months apart does nothing but undercut the sales. Good thing Mario never does that. Okay, either I'm stupid or the universe has a very funny sense of humor. We may probably never know why it took so long to come over here. Everything I've researched has more or less been sheer speculation. Again, the sales figures they would have gotten from releasing it the same year as Mario 2 is probably the most likely reason. Or it could be simpler than that. Maybe they just threw it straight from the shores of Japan.
Oh, that should land in about 2 years.
Given the extra time it would take for Mario 3 to release, it sure made way for one hell of an ad campaign. Commercials for the game got a lot more elaborate compared to the first game in Mario 2. A lot of McDonald's ads I've noticed. Makes sense. I mean, if you wanted to sell any product in the 80s and 90s, you would probably find a Happy Meal tie-in somewhere. But the one thing that's brought up at some point whenever this game is being discussed is the 1989 movie The Wizard. I've never seen this movie, and I really don't have any desire to do so. Outside of some hilariously unsubtle product placement by Nintendo, which there is a lot of in that movie, it looks like a really boring family film. The only reason The Wizard has any kind of significance now is that the ending of the film featured a tournament between the main characters that officially introduced Super Mario Bros. 3 to the US. I'll give it this, that is one hell of a way to generate hype for the game. I can imagine kids were losing it in the theaters while this scene was going on. Come a few months later, and the game would hit store shelves in February of 1990. I want you to keep that in mind because by 1990, We were already kind of into the next generation of video game consoles. I mean, the Genesis was out for a whole year worldwide, and a few months later, the Super Nintendo would come out in Japan. I bring this up because a common complaint this game received by critics when it came out was that it was on the NES to begin with, when there were consoles with better graphics out around that time. Which is really a stupid complaint to make. It's not the game's fault the graphics aren't better, it's just using the hardware it was given. I chalk it up to it being a different time and people generally not knowing how to review video games because that practice has gotten so much more sophisticated. Ah!
Yeah! All right! I hate the law! Oh, Jesus!
You will play this until it breaks you!
The thing I find impressive though is that despite those complaints, Mario 3 still sold 17 million copies. I think that makes it the third best-selling game on the system behind the first game and Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt is the second best-selling game, and I think it's only because of this combo cartridge. This is why you should always check for leeches.
God damn it!
Those numbers are still really impressive since I don't think Mario 3 ever became a pack-in game for the NES. And those numbers aren't even counting the re-releases for All-Stars or the Game Boy Advance. That reminds me, I'm gonna be showing stuff from all the versions of Mario 3 in this video because it's really not worth going into that much detail about all the differences each of them have. With exception to one, but I'll get into that in a little bit. By and large, regardless of what version you play, you're likely gonna get the same experience from each of them. It really depends if you want a more authentic experience or if you want one with better graphics and sound. The Game Boy Advance version is really interesting since it's sort of being treated as a sequel to the remake of Mario 2, and for this remake of Super Mario Bros. 3, they called it Super Mario Advance 4.
Everything I know is a lie! When did this happen?
I feel like after a while you should just stop putting so many subtitles and numbers into it. Even though both titles are accurate, this is the weirdest tongue twister of a name I've ever seen. Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. Yeah, just like how I'm a second child born first. So in a fun little change, Mario 3's story is actually a little more dynamic than the first games. Instead of Peach getting captured, Bowser is waging war on the neighboring kingdoms trying to claim their power.
War is no laughing matter. Especially when it's being waged by a turtle.
Mario and Luigi are tasked with saving the rulers of each kingdom by retrieving a magic scepter that's transformed them into different creatures, with each kingdom having been taken over by the 7 Koopalings. Dude, Bowser? Fox, he's got 7 kids. I know Nintendo has since retconned this and said they're not his kids, but come on, look at Bowser. Tell me you wouldn't. Once we've defeated all the Koopalings, we find out that Bowser has kidnapped Peach while we were busy, thus leading us to his kingdom. I'll give it this, that is a fun surprise when it happens, since after each world, Peach does send us a letter of encouragement, and then the last one from Bowser is going, yo, she's mine. Good for him it's not Peach from the movie. But you know how it goes, we beat Bowser and save Peach, with a fun little self-aware joke at the end, which I appreciate. I love how we're only 3 games in and they're already making fun of how Peach gets kidnapped. The story isn't important here, but I appreciate it tries to be a little more dynamic than the first game. It's certainly more expressive. I love seeing the different looks of each of the kings you save, and also how they look when updated in the All-Stars version. It takes the simple idea of the first game and refines it nicely. And I think refined is probably the best word to use when describing this game because man, this game is so good. Yeah, I don't feel like beating around the bush. Mario 3 is so damn fun from beginning to end. Especially after playing Mario 2 and not feeling too much of an evolution, this game takes everything about the last 2 games and improves upon it. Let's start with the biggest one. Mario can once again kill enemies by jumping on them. Oh, thank God I was running out of my dosage. Ow! The control in general just feels way better. The stiffness of the first game is gone, and the rigid stop and go feel from 2 is not a thing anymore. Mario now has way more momentum behind his movement. The longer you run before you jump, the further your jump will go. You got more control in the air, so if you need to correct yourself, you can do so. Granted, you could do this in the other games too, but the floatier jumps makes it feel like I have way better control over Mario's movements. This alone would have already been a great enough reason to get this game, but the levels, oh my god, they are so much more interesting. I've gone on previously about how the level design in the first couple of Mario games was never really its strong suit. Nothing terrible, mostly. But Mario 1, seriously try to remember the layout of any stage from that game. I don't think you can. I mean, sure, everyone knows how World 1-1 looks, but who's gonna be a World 6-3 specialist?
I mean, I was proud.
Mario 3 has so much more unique layouts by comparison. It's hard to describe it other than that. They are just fun levels to go through. It feels like speeding through them is pretty encouraged since your movement is way faster than earlier and a lot of the levels are pretty short. Some of them last roughly a minute or less, but I think that's a good thing since it can ease players into what they can expect. The addition of slopes really helps too since you can slide down them and kill almost everything in your path, which is pretty true to life. Very little can survive an Italian's ass. There's a lot of fun additional items to interact with that, once again, give these levels so much charm and makes them just, again, so much fun to play. You got these music blocks that bounce you, conveyor platforms to time your jump on, rising and lowering water, ice that can melt with your fire flowers. You can ride a shoe, been trying that for a while. It's just so cool to see how alive these levels feel, as Mario 3 was officially the first game in the series to have dedicated themes to each world. Technically, Mario 2 USA did do that, albeit very loosely, and it wasn't really a Mario game, so I know this aspect is kind of taken for granted nowadays, as there have been so many Mario games that use this specific level order. Hell, most games in general did this for a time. World 2 is a desert, World 3 is a beach, World 8 is hell. And yeah, I get it, it's a little difficult to look past that, but I think there's something that a lot of you need to remember. Yeah, how did I put it?
Time is a myth.
This was 1988, and I mean, when would there have been another game to do something like this? Sure, it started a trend, but that's not the game's fault. It being the innovator of something that became overdone, that just means it created something long-lasting. It's even more impressive since Mario 3 has 90 levels. That is insanity, and a far cry from the 30 or so levels from the first two games. You gotta remember that during this time, some games were rocking around 10 levels. Hell, Mega Man 2 came out the same year and had 14. I know it's not an apt comparison since these games didn't share similar budgets or manpower, despite Mario 3 only having a team of 11 people on it, but nonetheless, that should be commemorated. And in this game's defense, the way the worlds are designed goes beyond just the way they look, starting with just one screen to sprawling across different areas to explore. Yeah, World 1 is basically a grid, but World 2 uses the desert theme in its levels with sand tornadoes, quicksand, the sun. World 3 has Japan in it, I hope they have the fire ramen. World 4 is shaped like a turtle. That's just cool. It also has most people's favorite level gimmick, as some of the levels have big enemies and blocks. It looks cool, but functionally it doesn't really add anything too worthwhile. The bigger Koopas are actually easier to deal with since there's so much more of them to jump on. World 5 is probably my favorite incorporation of the sky as a world theme, with the first half taking place on the ground and the second take place up in the clouds. World 6, okay, I don't have much to say, but I'm a sucker for ice worlds in games. If you have any familiarity with this game, you've probably seen the jokes about World 7 being the weed world, and yeah, I can't debate that. I don't know if that was the intention, but it's certainly what's being shown. Even the music sounds like something you listen to while high. Before bed, Mario probably just went, whoa! Man! Oh, that's some good.
That's 2 drug jokes in 2 separate Mario reviews. I gotta note that down. I'm on a roll today.
World 8 is definitely the coolest with all this fire and darkness, although it does have some of my least favorite level types in the game. As much as I enjoy the level gimmicks, there are some that just never get better for me. This is the first game to introduce auto-scrolling, and it's not fun. It just feels like an arbitrary challenge added onto a level that honestly would have been more fun to play normally. Most of the airships are auto-scrollers, and they all consist of just dodging bullet bills and other projectiles coming your way. I know most people are quick to bring up the water levels as something that's annoying, and I don't find them to be that annoying personally, since the swimming controls work just fine. If anything, I find the levels with rising and lowering water to be more annoying, since it cuts your speed in half whenever you touch it, and more often than not you'll get...
Oh right, that reminds me. There's a lot of enemies in this game. Now replace the word game with world, and that's a very different statement.
There are 51 unique enemies in the game, which I mean, how often can I sound impressed now? I think it's just cool that most of them are different. You have the returning Koopas that you can kick around, the Goombas, those freakish little chodes, but now we're introduced to a whole bunch of mainstays like Thwomps, Booghosts, and Chain Chomps, which were actually made in reference to how Miyamoto was chased by a dog as a kid and it scared him. You know what? I can respect that, taking your fear and creating something that can defeat it. Hey man, I can relate.
Ah! Keys! I am so fucking ready!
It is funny seeing some of the one-off enemies that are only in this game. Like you have Karimbo's Goomba, which is just a Goomba in a shoe.
There's a lot to unpack in that description.
You have the angry sun that chases you, and that's better than my angry son.
Look out, Dad!
No, 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 no. Oh my god.
You got this weird-ass thing called Rotodisc? That sounds awesome. And what are these little guys? Pile driver micro Goombas? Are they gonna give me the tombstone? Tombstone! There is a cool aspect on the overworld where you can actually fight a pair of Hammer Brothers, and when you beat them, you get a power-up. And sometimes you can get a really rare one.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. There's a lot of power-ups in this game. I get reminded of things a lot.
Remember how I said that Mario 2 felt kind of boring after a while? Well, it wasn't until this game where I discovered the biggest factor of that. There were no power-ups. Like, at all. I mean, yeah, you had the mushroom for your health bar, and sometimes you would get a Starman, but other than that, yeah, there was nothing. So I imagine the whiplash going from that to Mario 3 must have been intense, because Mario 3 has one of the best selection of items in this series. I'm serious. Other games have gotten close, and Mario 3D World might be my favorite, but until then, it wasn't even a contest. There are so many fun and interesting power-ups to find in this game. You have the returning mushroom and fire flowers, but then we have the most iconic power-up in this game, the Super Leaf. This transforms you into Raccoon Mario, and I mean, that's just adorable. It's even on the front cover. That's hard to do. My last model attempt didn't end so well. You can use your tail to swing at enemies and break blocks, but the best feature is when you build up enough speed, you can fly for a few seconds and get some really good air on this. There's often a lot of goodies to find in the sky whenever the level gives you a leaf. It's also great since it lets you glide as well, so you can correct your jumps way easier. There's also the Tanuki suit that gives you the same abilities as a leaf, but now it makes you look like a furry. Boing! And it gives you the ability to turn into an indestructible statue. Good thing the floor is solid. There's also the frog suit, which, yeah, kind of sucks on land, but when you get underwater, oh my god, the swimming is so freaking nice with this thing. The Hammer Brothers suit, this is amazing. You get to throw hammers at enemies, and this destroys everything. Goombas, Chain Chomps, Thwomps, even Booghosts. The best part is that Mario 3 introduces us to an inventory you can access across the overworld, where you can save items you collect from either the Hammer Bros or the Toad Houses. The Toad Houses give you these little mini games to solve, which are nothing crazy. You'll usually walk out with something, which is nice. But there are also some secret items you can find that affect the overworld. The hammer allows you to break certain blocks to find secret areas in a couple worlds. You have Karibo's shoe that lets you bounce on spikes and kill all enemies. It also makes you bounce a little bit while running. That's cool. I wish my shoe could do that. No. The magic whistle is easily the hardest one to find, but it allows you to skip certain worlds whenever you use it. I do love it uses the same sound as the warp whistle from Zelda. That's a cute reference. But seriously, some of these are really hard to find just because they're hidden in the most obscure of places. In World 1-3, you grab a Koopa shell, stand on this specific block and hold down, and a few seconds later you fall through the set. Walk to the end and there's the whistle. How the hell are you supposed to figure that out? I will say this one is a bit charming since it plays into the idea that Mario 3 is actually a stage play. Yeah, I think that's something people tend to forget about this game, but look at the details in the graphics. The title screen has curtains open up, the platforms are bolted into the backdrop, and they cast a shadow. Mario ends by running off stage. It wasn't until Shigeru Miyamoto confirmed in an interview that this actually was the intention. I mean, that's a really cool framework. You could totally tell me this was put on by the Ember Island players, and I believe it.
I just want to let you know that I'll always love you. Like a brother.
I've already mentioned the Koopalings, but they act as the dedicated boss fights for the end of each world. None of them are hard. It's the standard jump on them 3 times and you win kind of spiel. And they very lightly change between each other. You have Larry Koopa. Wait, f***ing Larry Koopa. That's such a strangely normal name for the series. Look out, everybody, it's Larry. Morton Koopa Jr. Who was Morton Koopa Sr., and was he this stacked? Wendy O. Koopa? What does the O stand for? It's Wendy Koopa. Iggy Koopa looks like Millhouse. Roy Koopa? I mean, he's our boy. Lemmy Koopa. Now this kid, he gets bullied. And who's this last one? Ludwig von Koopa?
Deutschland ist im Pierreich. Hubish.
The bosses aren't really this game's strong suit, but I'll give them this. They aren't poor Boom Boom. He's the mid-world boss you find in the castles, and this guy, bless his heart, he's trying, but man, this is not his profession. He's so easy to beat, it makes me wonder why have a boss at all. Maybe it's actually a way to give you a break after the castle stages, since this is the one aspect of the game I'm not a huge fan of. I don't mind the castles being here, but I don't really enjoy them that much either. A couple are okay, but there are some that just require too many steps in order to actually complete them. You have this one where you have to go through multiple doors just to figure out which one it is. Then you have this one where you have to use a peace switch in order to navigate a bunch of coins to find the correct door to get out. The fortress in World 8 is a mess. There are so many looping rooms with no clear way to get out, weirdly strict timing required to get through some doors, and tons, and I mean tons of blocks you have to destroy when you're Big Mario, which means if you get hit, you have to loop around, get another mushroom, and then try again. I can say without question, this is easily the worst level in the game. So much so that I flat out just gave up on my All-Stars run. I didn't care at this point. Mario 3 does have some moments of that happening, either because you have to think of something outside the box, or sometimes do something completely outside of reason. This one level in World 6 is infamous for that reason, as you have to have a raccoon leaf, grab a shell, and fly up to an opening in the ceiling while still holding the shell, and then throw it at these blocks to clear a path. Mind you, that's a lot easier said than done, since you have to hold on to the B button in order to hold on to the shell, or else you'll just let it go, while also tapping the jump button so you can fly upwards. It's funny to me because that kind of stuff isn't in the final level at all, which you would expect to be the hardest level, but nah, it's actually pretty straightforward and easy, especially compared to the other castle level right before it. You can even phase through the walls. I've been trying that my whole life. This leads us to the final battle with Bowser, which is actually pretty fun, all things considered. It's pretty simple, just making him break blocks over a pit, but compared to the other bosses, I'd say it's the most fun and easily the best one in the game. Now, with all that under wraps, what else can I really say about Super Mario Bros. 3?
I know it's not a good game. It's a great...
The jump in quality is so stark and impressive here. Everything that was introduced in Mario 1 has been improved upon in this game. The controls are better, the level design is better, the enemies are more unique, it's a more expressive game, the music is a lot of fun, the power-ups are a lot of fun, the worlds are a lot of fun. This game is just a lot of fun, plain and simple. It sticks to its strengths while also trying to elevate the Mario formula. This created the standard and template for all Mario games going forward. Quite literally, every 2D Mario game from this point onward draws some sort of inspiration from Mario 3. Even some 3D games do that. And while yes, the reliance of what has been created here has been kind of a hindrance to some of these games, that's not Mario 3's fault. This was the next jump in quality that the series really deserved. There's a reason why it became as popular and as influential as it did. It's just solid. Which version do you play? I don't care, man. They're all good. NES, All-Stars, Advance, you're gonna have a good time. I'll say that Advance does actually have some really cool extra stuff on top of the existing remake. Yeah, the sound is a little rough and they still make the characters talk, but thankfully not nearly as much as before. But this version of Mario 3 has 72 additional levels. That's just crazy.
These weren't in the game upon its initial release. You actually had to buy the Game Boy Advance e-reader separately, and then also separately buy a deck of cards that apparently had the levels on them, swipe them, and then you could play them. Even for Nintendo, that's really dumb.
Thankfully, the re-releases of this game include all the levels right out the gate on both the Wii U and Switch Online apps. The levels are pretty cool, with some unique challenges that allow you to do things like pick up vegetables like in Mario 2. That's pretty sick. Maybe one day I'll sit down and beat all the extra levels, just like how I'll beat every game I own.
Help. But once again, you're gonna have a good time regardless of which version you play. They're all still Mario 3 at their core, which I think is all anyone could have asked for.
Not me. I wouldn't have asked for that.
Okay then. What would you have asked for?
My mortality.
Dude, Georgia's haunted as Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. What are you doing in my house? I've just picked up a new hobby, language learning. You see, I've noticed on my last 3 videos that I've spoken a different language, and I've done it flawlessly. You can tell by the subtitle. So I figured I'd learn from the languages I descend from. Let's try Italian. Il film originale di Disney Channel era il pezzo del cinema. Whatever that means, I completely agree with it. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's try German again. Klavierschratzenperrung Gefordweiner Point. Clearly I know what I'm doing. Now, let's swing for the fences. I don't descend from this, but I've always wanted to try. I'm gonna speak Japanese because that's such an easy language to learn. Here we go. Super Mario World. Okay, either that's in English, or I know Japanese. I don't think that says Super Mario World. Oh man, here we go. Do you ever get stage fright just by looking at a game? Theater life isn't for me. Super Mario World genuinely needs no introduction. Just like Mario 3, this game has left such an outstanding legacy in both gaming and in the Mario series. And that gives me so much unique stuff to talk about for this game. It's a good thing that no one else has ever talked about it. Okay, in my defense, similar from my reasons I wanted to talk about the first Mario game, there's not that many videos on Mario World that are from within the past decade. I mean, like, there's a handful to be sure, but surprisingly, there's even less than the first game. Which confused me at first until I put together that there is just kind of a common understanding that Super Mario World is one of the best games in the franchise, and platforming total. Yeah, we're really going 2 for 2 on this one, but it's true. Super Mario World set another standard in the world of gaming. Not just because it's a genuinely well-designed game, though that certainly helps it, but this would be the first game that Nintendo would ever release during the 16-bit generation of gaming. The Genesis had a 2-year head start, leaving everyone asking, what's Nintendo gonna do about it? Well, that's certainly something. The Super Nintendo would release in Japan in 1990 under the name Super Famicom, with it releasing in North America in 1991, and across the board, this is an incredible upgrade from the NES on a number of levels. The graphical detail you could get on here was unthinkable, and the sound quality? Oh man, when you get a good composer, music on the Super Nintendo just hits so differently. Want proof? Listen to any and all music from Final Fantasy on this console. This certainly made for good competition against the Sega Genesis. While there will always be debate between these consoles, I don't think it's too controversial to say that the Super Nintendo, at least technically speaking, was the superior console. It's just a shame that the console has a real face for radio. Yeah, I'll be blunt, I don't like the design for the Super Nintendo. It's honestly one of the ugliest consoles I've ever seen. The gray matte finish, the blocky design, these purple switches that stand out like sore thumbs that are also purple. I'll always take the Super Famicom's design by comparison. It's nothing too crazy, but the sleeker look does fit it a lot better in my opinion. The same goes for the cartridges. I like the way these guys look a lot better. But why in the hell are there no end labels? This is something I don't get with the Famicom lineup. No end labels on either original or Super Famicom games. That was only when it came over to America. I mean, sure, the cartridges were uglier, but at least I could read it on the shelf. Like, what's this game supposed to be? Oh right, the game I'm talking about! Mario World would take 3 years to make. From what I've researched, its development started probably somewhere around 1987, which was also the same time they were making Mario 3. Jeez, acting a little Sega there, Nintendo. Miyamoto would go on to say that he felt the game was a little rushed towards the end of development, which, if I'm being honest, does not really show at all in the final product. I'm sorry, what's your excuse? There was a desire to make this game even bigger than Mario 3, creating a large, sprawling world to explore with tons of secrets and surprises waiting around every turn. I think Nintendo was seeing the growing competition with Sega and wanted to make sure that this game was as impressive as it possibly could be. I mean, in Japan, there wasn't that much competition with the game releasing in November of 1990, but it would take close to a year for it to be released internationally. By that time, the Genesis was killing it in sales, and come June of 1991, the Spawn was born. Yeah, all eyes were on the Blue Man, leaving people to wonder if Mario could compete.
That reminds me. Hindsight is really funny.
Mario World would be launched with the Super Nintendo as a pack-in title, low-key making it the reason that many people had bought the system. It worked in 1985, and it would work again 6 years later, selling 20 million copies.
I will say right off the bat that Mario World is definitely more a case of refining and improving on what was done previously, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Which I know to some might seem a bit lacking, considering that Mario 3 was such a massive leap for the series. But holy shit, Mario World does so much right.
Allow me to no longer make my feelings for this game secret, despite them being shared by many others. I'm unique and special. Mario World is one of my favorites. There's a lot that this game does so well from the previous game. While Mario 3 is the game that set the standard for the series, World is what elevated it to an even higher status. Even if it does admittedly strip back a few elements that make Mario 3 so fun to begin with, but I'll get into the specifics more as we go along. As for the plot, well, there it is, all one paragraph of it. Mario and Peach decided to have a picnic in a place called Dinosaur Island, and Bowser was like, "No guards? Hell yeah!" and snatched up Peach, leaving Mario to chase them, and I guess Bowser saw that there were some castles here for some reason, and told the Koopalings to take them, and do you really care that much about this? Mario's still not and will never be that deep in terms of story. You know what you're gonna get, and it's not worth going into that much detail about it. I guess I wish there was just a bit more flair or presentation behind it. We start the game up and the universe just tells us, save Peach, pick up the milk on your way home. If Miyamoto felt that this game was rushed towards the end, I'm gonna guess this was one of the victims of that. I imagine there was probably meant to be an opening cutscene to this game explaining all of this, probably similar to what the likes of the Game Boy Advance version got, which I'll say right off the bat, no, I did not play much of this game for this video. It's by and large the exact same game with worse colors and sound. I didn't feel like doing a whole second playthrough with a worse version. It's perfectly playable, but you can get access to the original much easier, and it's just the overall better version. Do the math. Okay, but let's get into the real meat of the game. Super Mario World, by and large, plays just like the previous games. That's something I admittedly like about playing these games in a row. I don't have to re-explain the mechanics of an already simple control scheme. Although now that we're on the Super Nintendo, we do have more buttons to work with a much more comfortable button layout. Oh man, I may have some issues with this controller's size because, well, look at that. But the button layout is much nicer than it was on the NES controller. So much so that it created the standard button layout for most controllers even to this day. Being able to set my thumb on the run button and have the rest of it hit the jump just feels so natural. Although in Mario World's case, the only new button being used is A, as it lets us do a spin jump that destroys smaller enemies and blocks like it's nothing, and even lets us bounce on some hazards like thwomps, piranha plants, and even some spikes. It's not the best move to use when attacking, if I'm being honest, but the fact you can avoid damage on almost anything is insane, to a point where the spin jump would unfortunately get nerfed in later entries. The only other difference in Mario's control is his jump isn't quite as floaty or go as high, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Mario's control has been fine-tuned even more than last time, to a point where this is honestly the best Mario has ever controlled, dead serious. Other games control great, but Mario World gives me just enough control of my movement without feeling slippery, and enough resistance without it feeling stiff. It's the best aspects of Mario 1 and 3's controls rolled together to make this, and with that good control comes even better levels than before, and the way they're presented to us is even better. Instead of 8 individual worlds like previously, Super Mario World gives us a world, and then Mario took it over. This is one of the coolest aspects of this game. Each area is interconnected to make one large world to explore. You start off on Yoshi's Island, or as the wiki page calls it, America. Okay, welcome to the US. This is America. Then you have Donut Plains, Vanilla Dome, Cheese Bridge, Butter Bridge, Cookie Mountain, Soda Lake, the Forest of Illusion. I wonder what that tastes like. You got Chocolate Island, and then you end off with the world of Bowser. Now, I don't know why they went with the food theme, but it does help me remember some of these places a little easier. That, and it also means that the game can be made with your very own household goods.
And that's how I made my first video game.
The large overworld really helps making the game's environment feel more immersive. There's a lot to discover when exploring the stages. The fact that the game takes place on an island does mean that the more distinct world themes from 3 are gone, And I would be lying if I said Dinosaur Island was as visually interesting across the board. It really isn't until we get to the Forest of Illusion and Chocolate Mountain when we get to see some more unique locales. But I don't think it's a bad thing since the stages don't really hold themselves down to one certain theme. It keeps you on your toes and it makes it fun to see what new environments will be brought into. The levels are what you'd come to expect from the Mario series up to this point, but now they're just way bigger and filled with a lot more secrets. I'm not kidding, just look at the sheer size of these levels compared to the previous games. The shorter and more concentrated level design from 3 has been replaced with much longer levels filled with more intricate set pieces. This is made more apparent with Mario World being the first game in the series to have visible checkpoints, and depending on how far in the level you cross, it gives you an idea as to how long the total level could be. One thing you might notice is that some levels are marked with a yellow circle and others are marked with a red one. Yellow levels are normal, but the red levels have an additional exit for you to discover that takes you off the beaten pathway, and more often than not, the first thing you'll find in these exits are the switch palaces. You may occasionally see the outline of a block in a level, and when you activated the designated switch palace, those outlines get replaced with blocks. More often than not, these will just make future hazards easier, like covering up bottomless pits, blocking certain enemies like thwimps, and leading us to even more secrets and alternate exits. It is strange how only a couple of them give you items while others don't react at all. Speaking of items, the one thing you'll notice is that the large selection of power-ups from Mario 3 has almost entirely been gutted from this game. We're back down to 4, with the Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Starman returning. And yeah, it does seem like a massive downgrade at first. I mean, the last game let you throw hammers. You can't do that in real life without the consequences. Yeah, the selection we had in the last game was fantastic. But I think you'll be fine when you see it was replaced by the best damn power-up in the series, the Cape Feather. Yes, this is the only new power-up added, and this cape gets Mario laid.
I burn for you.
For one, you get a spin attack similar to the Raccoon Leaf, but it lets you spam it going insanely fast. Enemies don't stand a chance when you do this, they drop like flies. If I had to guess, Mario's been training. This is not an easy move to pull off, I've tried.
This is why Mom doesn't love you.
And if that wasn't good enough, when you build up enough speed and jump in the air, you can use the cape to fly. The controls are a little strange at first. You have to press the opposite direction on the D-pad as you're descending, and yeah, it's a bit to wrap your head around. Don't worry, I double majored for a reason. But when you get the hang of it, you can basically fly over entire levels. It breaks any challenge this game had into pieces. I love the Cape Feather, but I totally get why it wasn't brought back. The ability to fly in these levels takes away any and all fun you can have while playing them. So I'd say if you get the Cape Feather, use the flight sparingly. But the one thing that does come back in later games is your new animal companion Yoshi making his debut in the series. You see, when Bowser reached the island, he trapped all the other Yoshis into eggs and put them into blocks, because even a tyrant like Bowser won't murder. See, it's not murder, it's manslaughter. Yoshi more or less acts like an additional power-up for the game. You can ride on top of him and make him eat fruit that's in the stage to get an additional power-up, and he can also eat enemies by sticking his tongue out. And all that done with Mario smacking Yoshi on the head. What the fuck, Mario? Why you gotta be so violent? Letting out that Italian rage, aren't you? But don't you worry, the abuse doesn't stop there.
Why did I sound proud of that?
Because you can jump off of Yoshi to get extra height, and when you're about to fall into a pit, well, long live the plumber. I will say it's weird not having Yoshi's flutter jump, as I keep forgetting that he wouldn't get that until his own game, Yoshi's Island. But in this game, there's plenty to him besides that, and that comes in the form of the Koopa shells. There are now 4 different colored Koopas you can find in the stages, and depending on said color, Yoshi will have a different effect. Green shells act normal when you spit them out. Red shells have you spit fire. What? How did that happen? Maybe because that is one spicy Koopa.
We shared love and made love.
The yellow Koopa gives Yoshi a shockwave whenever you land from a jump, but the most useful is the blue shell, as it gives you a pair of wings and lets you fly. Do they just want us to skip levels? Because it really feels like they do. Oh, but it doesn't stop there, as you can get similarly colored Yoshis that give you the special ability regardless of what shell they eat. God, I fucking love this game. I feel like every time you think you've seen the height of something, it just keeps building on itself. Evolution is the best word to describe this game. Sorry, Christians. And I'm guessing the enemies evolved from their base form as well. Yeah, I already mentioned that there are different colored Koopas, but now there is an alternate version of each returning enemy. Goombas? Well, okay, they've actually just been replaced with Galoombas, which I'm guessing are just Goombas if their life was in shambles. Or not, a beard can mean anything. Independence, individuality, attention-seeking, it can mean anything. They're the only ones that are different from before, as a jump won't kill them. You have to pick them up and throw them at other stuff, which is fine in my opinion. I love how snappy it is, and the ability to now throw stuff above you makes him way more versatile. We got new faces like the Wigglers, which are pretty annoying to deal with. You got Monty Moles, Sumo Brothers, Mega Moles, Bonsai Bills. You got Chargin' Chucks that are all sports themed and take 3 hits to kill. I've been telling you for years, Chuck, you peaked in high school. Fish bones, or just dead fish. Why? Oh, speaking of dead things, Boo Ghosts are back alongside Big Boo, and now they have their own dedicated level type, the Ghost Houses. These are like puzzle versions of the castle stages where you have to think outside the box in order to find your way out. Usually it's not too bad, but finding the secret exit can take a bit of brain power to figure out. And yeah, every ghost house has a second exit, and while some of them you may find by accident, others not so much. The alternate exit in Donut Plains' house tripped me up the first time, since you basically had to fly into what looks like certain death and take the upper path to the exit. The annoying part is you need the cape feather in order to find it, and this stage doesn't give you the power up, meaning that you have to go to a previous level just to get it, and then come back and try again. Thankfully, you can exit previously completed levels after you get the power up just by hitting start and select, but this is something about some of the secrets in Mario World that does get pretty annoying. More often than not, you'll need either Yoshi or the cape feather in order to reach the ultimate exit, and if you lose them before that point, you have to go all the way back to another level just to find them and try it all over again. Thankfully, this is somewhat circumvented when you get to the alternate exit in the Donut Ghost House I mentioned, as it takes you to the top secret area. It's just 5 blocks. You can get a Yoshi, 2 capes, or 2 fire flowers. This basically cuts down the need to hunt in other levels, and it's a great way to restock, but you do end up having to backtrack in order to get them if needed, which can get a little tedious. It is worth it though, since alternate exits open up new levels to play, and after a while, it'll open up a passage to the Star Road, a group of 5 special levels that require you to find their secret exit in order to proceed. Beat all of these and it leads you to the special world, housing the 8 hardest levels in the game, and that's no hyperbole. These stages can get really tough, if not because of the precise platforming or onslaught of enemies being thrown at you. It's stuff like this in the stage called Gnarly, like what even is this? It's not impossible, I should clarify, it's just compared to the rest of the game, it definitely puts you to the test. Beat this world and you can return to the first area, seeing that everything is now an autumn theme, and the enemies are even dressed up in Halloween costumes. That's actually really cute. I like the piranha plants being jack-o'-lanterns, and the bullet bills are now pigeons who have seen the end of days. What is going on with their face? What are they seeing? This all gets topped off with a final showdown against Bowser in his castle. Just real quick, I prefer the castle stages here so much more than in Mario 3. They do not require nearly the amount of guesswork that those did. These are straightforward with the appropriate amount of challenge and unique obstacles to dodge, helping them stay fresh. The bosses, on the other hand, well, I guess some things never change, or in this case, they somehow get easier. The Koopalings are a complete joke in this game. There's nothing challenging about any of them. Wendy is the only one that gets a little annoying because the arena is so small. Other than that, nope, not bad at all. Even the original bosses are a cakewalk. Reznor isn't a challenge at all. The Big Boo is pathetically easy. Again, these don't ruin the game or anything, but I do wish there was just a bit more personality out of them. Bowser's level is pretty fun, having to pick your poison type challenge where you select which door to go through, unless you find the secret exit that takes you to the back door. He has a back door? Is he asking to be defeated? I would have loved it if it was actually just a trap and you die instantly by using it. Bowser's fight is pretty fun, you just throw a bunch of Mecha Koopas at him, but you do at least have a chance of getting hit by this boss. But with the final hit, we defeat Bowser, we save Peach, and we meet up with the Yoshis to celebrate another glorious victory. Man, just like last time, what can I really say about Super Mario World? It's kind of the perfect game. There's so much about it that works across the board. The control is damn near perfect. The level design is so much fun and explorative. And above all else, it's just so damn charming. This is the game that I feel really ironed out this series' personality. The expressive world and characters makes playing the game just that much more immersive. Sure, compared to later Super Nintendo games, the graphics are a bit simple, but I feel that simplicity helps show off the capabilities of the console. The music especially helps now that we have better sound quality, and it's all the more impressive that the music is based on the exact same melody. I'm not kidding. The overworld theme is great, the athletic theme is fun, the underwater track is so serene, and this game has the best damn castle theme in the series. It's so threatening yet ominous, it just fits perfectly. Yeah, the bosses aren't great, and it can admittedly take a little long to complete, but I never get tired of playing this game. I got 96 star on the original cartridge, again on the Switch, and I intend to do it again with the Japanese version. Yeah, I found that I really like collecting international versions of games that I own, and now I own the American and Japanese versions of the first 4 Mario games. That's not hard, mind you, these games are really easy to find, but I think it's a nice novelty.
So, fun fact, if you actually want to get into collecting Super Nintendo games, I'd actually recommend throwing in some Super Famicom games as well. It's actually surprisingly cheaper. A cool example, actually, earlier this year, my fiance and I had the chance to go to Japan, and while we were there, she brought me to this used game store in Tokyo, and while I was there, I was able to snag Final Fantasies 4, 5, and 6, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, and Mega Man 7, all 6 of these, for less than $60. For those who don't know how absolutely insane that is, just look up the American prints of these online and see just how much they cost and go, "Ah!" And even better, if you have a Super Nintendo, you can technically play these games on here. The only thing that would stop it is if you look inside the cartridge slot, there would be these 2 plastic like divots or pins that would stop the cartridge from going down all the way, which is kind of interesting because I discovered that aspect about the Super Nintendo a couple years ago, but apparently mine were just already ripped out. I guess someone else had the same idea, and I tested it, and it worked out pretty well. So yeah, if you have a Super Famicom cartridge, you can plug it in, and you hit the power. My Super Nintendo doesn't work so well anymore, and if you plug it in, turn it on, that's pretty damn cool. There's not much that's different between the versions, the only caveat being I can't read Japanese, regardless of how hard I try. Though there is one kinda messed up part of this version. In Vanilla Secret 3, you have to ride some dolphins to get to the end, and in the Japanese version, if you're on Yoshi, you can eat them. What the fuck, Japan? Are you letting out some rage too? So aside from the animal abuse, yeah, this game's pretty great. In all seriousness, I love this game, and I think anyone who plays it will too. It sticks to its strengths and delivers it on such a high quality. You know, I'm kind of getting flashbacks to when I ended my initial Sonic revisits, because even more so than those games, Mario World helped define not just a generation, but an entire era of gaming. I'm not sure when I'll get back to the Mario series, but I know when I do, I'm gonna have a good time. That's something I can always rely on Mario to do well. Now, in terms of my ranking of these games, I think I'm on a similar boat as everybody else, but I do want to show off my list, as well as what I think are the best versions of each game to play.
The bottom of the list is the Lost Levels. I think most people can agree with that. It's the only game of the bunch to actively detract instead of add. While I do find some enjoyment in how ruthless it is, if I played on original hardware, I'd feel completely differently about it. If you were to play it, do so on All-Stars. That save feature makes it a bit more bearable to get through. Then above that, I'm actually going to put Mario 2 USA. I found I'm actually in the minority of how I feel about this game, but I don't know, I think it's pretty unremarkable. I love how it looks and the character abilities are fun, but I think it's a little too stagnant for its length, and after a while, I do get bored playing it. Although the advanced version does bump it up quite a bit, so if you were to play it, do so on that one. It does honestly create a much better experience playing it. Third place I'd say goes to the original. It's a bit aged and it doesn't have as much compared to its successors, but its simplicity and short length does make it fun to blast through every now and again, and the legacy it created is something that I will always have respect for. Best version is All-Stars, but I feel NES is more than fine as well. Deluxe is a great version too, but it's a little hard to get and the smaller screen does make it a bit more annoying to play, though the extra modes are pretty great. In second, we got Mario 3. It does everything its predecessors did great and adds on top of it with fun levels, great power-ups, and very unique worlds to explore. The only thing holding it back are the auto-scrollers and castle levels. Best version is a bit of a toss-up. I think all of them have their qualities. Original feels the most natural to me, but All-Stars does have the save feature, and Advanced does have more content to play. Any and all are good options. I think it's just a matter of what you prefer. And on top, we've got Super Mario World. I just spent 20 minutes explaining why. I know there's some debate between this and 3, But I feel World irons out all my issues with that game, and it makes it the overall best Mario experience. Best versions on Super Nintendo, no question. I really don't see a reason to get the advanced version. Worse visuals, worse sound, it's a little harder to get, and it doesn't really add that much of real value. It's the weakest of the advanced series for me.
But aside from lost levels, you're gonna have a good time with these games regardless of the version. This is just my own personal opinion. If my opinion makes you upset, get therapy. Now, with all that under wraps, I was able to complete everything I wanted to with these games, except for one thing. The Goombas. These little guys have freaked me out for the longest time, and I need to know what they are. And there we go. Alright, this is a good start. A Goomba is a slang term for people of Italian descent, mainly in the United States, with several related connotations to the mafia? Did I do a racism? No, I'm Italian. That's my word. Wait a minute. That means for 4 games, I've been killing members of the mob. Well, it's a good thing I got my trusty hammer here to keep me safe from all possible threats. Oh my god.